Everton got more bad news yesterday, Simon. They were ready for it. They were expecting it. Deducted 2 further points for a second breach of the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules. They've been docked 2 points for admitting breaking spending rules by £16.6 million for the 3-year period up to June 2023. The latest punishment sees them drop to 16th in the table on 27 points. And now you kind of think survival. Will they be able to survive in the Premier League? Now, FFP expert Kieran Maguire, I know he's somebody you much respect, Simon. He cited a lack of consistency on the punishments being handed out, exactly like the one yesterday to Everton.
The Premier League initially wanted a 10-point deduction for Everton's first case when Everton were £19 million over the limit. They then wanted an 8-point deduction in respect of Nottingham Forest for going £34 million over the limit. And they wanted, I think it's 7-point deduction in this next case when Everton were £16 million over the limit. So you put those into any form of spreadsheet and you go, it's completely baffling. There's a lack of consistency. There's a lack of guidance, I think, coming from the Premier League itself as to what its members are expected to be able to do, and you can understand why Everton are so upset.
Is he right, Simon? A lack of consistency and a lack of guidance from the Premier League itself?
Well, look, what the Premier League's case is and what it presents and what the Independent Commission determine can be two different things. They're prosecuting on behalf of the other 19 member clubs on the basis of advancing a case, and it's up to the Independent Commission to determine how they want to sanction them. So I understand Kieran's argument about what there appears to be is a lack of consistency or transparency or a thought process that people can alight upon and say, well, I understand where they're coming from. Because, of course, they're suggesting 10 points for Everton breaching at 19 million and 8 points for Nottingham Forest breaching at 34. Now, of course, we also understand, because we've had people like Stephen Borson in here talking about mitigating circumstances and the approach, which I find a strange thing, quite frankly. Mitigation by being cooperative really shouldn't be a factor, because if you're defending yourself, being cooperative isn't necessarily part of your staple diet. You're there to be slightly adversarial and push it back as robustly as you possibly can.
You've got to cooperate, haven't you?
Well, yeah. I don't know if you do. I don't think you do. I mean, people don't tend to cooperate.
You would.
Well, depends what. I mean, look, if I'm defending myself, I'm going to defend myself in the most robust fashion. If someone's attacking me, irrespective if I'm a member of that organisation that's attacking me, I'm going to push back and be as not truculent, as belligerent as I can, but I'm going to be adversarial because I don't want what you're about to foist upon me. So I think there's a balancing act between the subjectivity of mitigation, and then also you've got to look at the fact that Nottingham Forest and Everton, didn't just breach by 19 million. They breached by 250 million and had a whole raft of allowable adjustments. And some of those allowable adjustments, all the other football clubs had as well. But I also think they were very forgiving about the loss of player values and the revenues that were potentially lost as a result of COVID and some of the dynamics of how that was calculated. But there is a challenge in my mind beginning to formulate around what we're doing to our league and what we're doing to the most investable, economically successful league, because it's only coming on top now. People have known these rules, and the only reason people are getting very aerated now is because point sanctions are coming in. If this had been budgeted in as a £20 million fine or a £30 million fine, they'd cry. Yeah. But they wouldn't cry as hard, and there wouldn't be this shouting of foul from outside voices like Andy Burnham or Mark Carney or Derek Hatton, whoever wants to pop up and have their two penneth about how they think the football world's held together. Yeah. All of these clubs have been complicit in allowing this landscape to develop and not having any concern about it. They've all had the opportunity to put forward a motion saying, oh, by the way, don't really like the way financial fair play is formulated, a little bit too hit and miss. Why don't we get together and have a vote on it and change the constitution or the rules around it? And none of them have done it. And now what's happening is the series of unintended consequences, or we don't like this is now sporting sanctions. Prior to that, not really much of a peep, was there?
No,
people didn't like it. People got fines, and now it's caught up with them.
Yes, and now Everton face the possibility of another points deduction next season after the Independent Commission couldn't decide whether or not costs of £6.5 million related to a further breach
were offsettable.
I mean, if you are an Everton fan, Simon, you are at the end of your tether. When does this end? I mean, and the fans, to a woman, to a man, are quite right to ask that.
Well, they are, because ultimately it's not their mistakes that are finding themselves into the consequence for their team, but this is the price on the ticket for football club ownership. There's jeopardy. People accept jeopardy. Well, they don't. They cry about it, but it's priced in terms of refereeing decisions, managerial bad mistakes, players make mistakes. So now we've got situations where owners are making mistakes.
Yeah.
And the ramifications of those are that football contains jeopardy. It's always contained jeopardy. There's a part of me, and I don't say this lightly, that says bad ownership, good ownership, the challenges of making bad decisions, financial landscapes, they are just the precinct of business and life and sport. And it happens on the field, so why would it not happen off it?
Yes.
You'd expect better. Mashiri is at the centre of this. And of course, there are other people around. I'm not going to give the late, great, very dear friend of mine, Bill Kenwright, a complete pass, because all those guys had voices. But the point is that the challenge for Everton fans is that the best thing that can happen to Everton is to get point deduction, because quite frankly, when they get points deduction, their team picks up performances. So they'll galvanise themselves, and maybe they'll pull themselves out of this slump. I still think Everton will avoid relegation.
You do.
I
You've
do.
said that all along.
I have
I mean, many will think it's the final nail for them.
No,
in regards to Premier League survival.
It's not. And when I hear observations from former Everton players like Andrews Townsend that seem to have forgotten they played for that football club, talking about the idea that there are, they get a lift. If the only way you can stay in a division as Luton Town is other teams getting sanctioned for transgressions that you weren't victims of, you weren't part of this league. The sporting merit that other teams can complain of legitimately that Everton have gotten is not the same for Luton, because Luton weren't there.
Yeah.
Right? So
Simon, to a degree, Andrews has got a point. From a player's perspective, from a fan's perspective, it makes a mockery of the league.
Well, it would also make a mockery of the league if the only way a promoted side can come up is if sporting sanctions are put on football teams. And it is becoming concerning that we get very bland accountants and lawyers determining the configuration of our football pyramid and our tables.
Exactly.
We don't want that. Like I said the other day, the last thing we want is a KC sitting in the dugout with a wig next to the manager determining decisions on the football field, because that's what we'll have next.
Yeah. When this was announced yesterday, someone I know quite well got in touch with me. Good grief, it's disgraceful. But it's 2 points. If we can't make up that 2 points with the run-in, then we deserve to get ourselves relegated.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.